Joining us now with a similar message of hope is Madison Cawthorn, the Republican running to win North Carolina's 11th district. Madison, your race was one that has since kind of captivated the nation. A lot of people looking at that as an example of a young newcomer overcoming the odds against someone who had the endorsement of several high-profile politicians. So what does your victory in that primary race say about the state of the Republican Party right now going into November?
I think the significant, overwhelming majority of Americans think that the majority of these career politicians in the GOP are cowards. You know, we know that they have just let our country down, especially when you're looking at the relations that's going on in America today. We have this fringe left element who has infiltrated the Black Lives Matter movement to start trying to destroy and redefine our country. And I hold the GOP accountable for not doing more to stop that. And so I think this has been a referendum on a lot of these career politicians not standing up for the average American.
And we hear that from a lot of our viewers all the time, especially given the current moment right now. A lot of them say that given this current movement that's happening across the country right now, where it could very much so be the difference of the different directions that our country goes in long term, that a lot of our Republican leadership is silent at this very time. So it's a little bit refreshing to see a new voice come in and kind of express the sentiment that you're saying right now. But even before this, of course, you did propose your candidacy, I should say, earlier than this unrest is taking place. What prompted you to run for Congress?
Well, the biggest motivator is the fact that I actually just got engaged. And so, Alex, I'm sure very much how you feel like I do, coming to work at OAN, trying to help do your part to change the country. My fiance and I, we were talking about when we wanted to have kids, how many we wanted to have. And while we started talking about that, I started thinking to myself, is this really a country and a society that I want to raise my family in? And I honestly cannot say yes to that question. So I want to work as hard as I can to create a better future for the future generations. I think it's all of our duty.
And when I look across the country, I think you're exactly right for saying that. No matter what side of the polarized type of political spectrum that we're looking at right now, there is a big part of this country that is saying, I'm not sure if the future does look brighter than the one that I entered. In fact, it's one that I'm sure people in our generation look at our parents and kind of compare the two. I mean, the idea of owning a house, for example, is something that is very different for many millennials. The idea of really what the future looks like is very much so uncertain. And when we talk about your agenda, too, it is a very much so conservative agenda, mainly in line with the president's, things that he kind of says on a daily basis. So if you were to make it to Congress, what type of lawmaker do you want to be?
I want to be one that takes action. Right now, I don't really believe that we are so much in a policy battle like we have been, in the early 90s. But I really think that we're in a culture war right now. I think it's our time to step up and start fighting back against this radical leftist ideology, which is starting to bankrupt our country both financially and morally. So, I want to focus on things that we can all agree on, whether that's infrastructure or healthcare reform, because I think we need to start working for the American people. Get rid of all this partisan divide. The two-party system has failed us. It's time for us to take our country back and make Congress work for we the people.
And Madison, when we talk about the future of politics, a lot of times the conversation in the media is these far left type of progressive lawmakers. I mean, AOC gets a lot of the attention. A lot of the other future generations, for example, are said to be the progressive left-wing type of party. But then there's the Republican side as well, and I feel like they don't get the type of attention that they do deserve when it comes to younger candidates, younger movements for that matter. I mean, we see that there are young conservatives very much so involved. You're representative of that. So does the GOP need to do a better job of not only reaching out to those younger voters, but also kind of propping them up and making them focal pieces of the party?
I actually have to push back on that. I believe that we need to elect candidates who can stand on their own. He's a little bit too centrist for me, but I think Dan Crenshaw does an excellent job of standing on his own, reaching out to young people and really circumventing the mainstream media and utilizing the advent of social media to be able to get this message of conservatism out. Now, while I'm a little more far right on the spectrum than he is, I've been very thankful that I've kind of been able to break that mold of young conservatives just kind of being thrown to the wayside. We have a great Congresswoman, Elise Stefanik, in Congress right now working on the Republican Party. But, she is a hardworking workhorse who just gets into committee and gets things done. I want to be somebody who takes this battle out into the public. I want to make sure that people understand what the Democrats are doing and just how deep the corruption goes in the kingdom of D.C. I feel like we've got these politicians on both sides who feel like they are royals just issuing decrees for us subjects to follow. But you know what? I'd rather take dangerous freedom to safe subjugation any day.
Yeah, and I think what you're speaking about right now, too, is something that the Republican Party can learn a little bit more about. It's the idea of running a strong candidate to that district. It's not a boilerplate type of thing. I think you're exactly right to say that. I mean, Dan Crenshaw is a great example, but he may not work in another district, for example. But, I mean, whatever you're doing, it seems like you've got a good hold on the situation. You have a very bright political future ahead of you, and I'm excited to see how the general election turns out as well. But Madison Cawthorn, I really appreciate you coming on tonight, breaking down your election victory and what comes next for the party. Thanks for joining us.
It's an honor, Alex. I'll be on anytime. Let me know. Thanks.
Take care, Madison.